Welcome to the Making Money in Multifamily show, where we discuss everything to do with multifamily real estate investing. We believe it's the best way to gain financial freedom and build lasting wealth. This is where you'll find the best information and practices to help you succeed in your real estate business, whether you're already experienced or just starting out. Here's your host, Dave Morja.
Hello, listener, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Dave Morja, and with me today is Whitney Elkins-Hutten. Whitney is the Director of Investor Education at passiveinvesting.com. She is a partner in over $700 million in real estate. That includes over 5,000 residential units across multifamily mobile home parks, single-family rentals, and assisted living, and over 1,400 self-storage units across 8 states in the U.S., and she also has a background experience flipping over $3 million in residential real estate. So just an incredible background, Whitney, and really appreciate being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, so I guess we'll dig kind of right into, your role in passiveinvesting.com, investor relations, and we mentioned before the show, it's all about the teaching, right? So do you just want to kind of explain to the listener what that means for you, what you really try to just encompass in your role at the company, and how you try to bring investors in, educate them, get them through the whole process of learning this real estate game?
Absolutely. And so for me, my role is investor education. So my background actually is in investor relations. I was the director of investor relations and operations at another private equity group, and actually had the privilege of raising on multiple deals with passiveinvesting.com. So I've known the company for a very long time. I'm actually a limited partner on many of those deals myself. I think my husband and I are in over 50 passive deals, 10 of which are with passiveinvesting.com. And so when I kind of, like COVID, I think a lot of us reinvented ourselves. And during this time period, I was like, what do I love about my job? And I'm a very competitive person. So I was so excited to do the fundraisers, just that pressure and everything, can you hit the mark? And at the same time, I really just fell in love with, helping investors understand what passive investing is and how it can actually help them achieve their goals. Maybe it's like creating cash flow, passive cash flow, maybe building equity within their portfolio, creating diversification out of the stock market and, helping them leverage tax benefits. But that's where I decided to focus my time and my energy, is really just, spending time with investors in situations like this and meetups, one-on-one calls, just to kind of help them, wrap their heads around what passive investing is and how it can be like a very beneficial part of their portfolio and help them achieve their goals.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I guess you mentioned, different avenues in which you maybe bring people into your top line funnel. What is kind of the 80%, looking at the Pareto principle, what's like the 80% of like what you do to get people into the business? How are you really kind of educating them to get them up to speed? Or if they're already educated, what are you doing to kind of make sure they're ready for like a specific deal?
Oh, yeah. So, if we're kind of breaking down the business funnel, for me, I like, putting like little golden nuggets across like the internet. Maybe it's, video, podcast. I love YouTube only because I can talk way faster than I can actually. I actually did a presentation at our Multifamily Investor Nation conference back in January. And I said, hey guys, if you're time crunched, video is amazing because you can like spin it into so many different avenues, like, break it up for, podcasts, leverage it for blogs, create like little snippets and for social media. But, for me, that's, what I concentrate on is video. It's not just because of the power of the leverage in it, but also it's much easier to create a connection with people, because they get to see you, they get to see how you react to questions. Are you, there's an element of, when we're talking face to face, is somebody like, do I know them? Do I like them? Can I trust them? And those are actually the 3 key hurdles or obstacles, or, maybe not even obstacles, but, 3 kind of like milestones that you need to cross in order to have an investor, actually believe in you, believe in your business and make an investment. So, some people come into, this type of like environment, maybe it's podcast or, one of my weekly YouTubes that I do with Passive Investing Made Simple. And they have no idea what passive investing is. So we start off there, just really kind of like breaking down a lot of the terminology, I don't know about you, when I first got into real estate, I was, you're learning a whole new language.
Drinking right out of the fire hose.
Right?
Yeah.
Totally. But, and the thing is, it's like, learning the stock market, learning anything. It's like we've created this whole dictionary of new words when there's actually a lot of translatable skills, a lot of translatable knowledge in there. And so I help people find those common threads so that it's not as scary and not as foreign to them. And then honestly, people, come in, maybe they've read a few books, join me on, a couple podcasts, or, in my weekly master class, or join one of my boot camps, and they have a little bit more base knowledge. Now it's about like, how can I help them, understand how this fits into their strategy? Like they get it, they know it's for them, but they were like, I don't know where to start. Okay, so we kind of bust through some myths. We help them understand some of the math. That way they can go into their next investment with more confidence. And then other people are like old hats at this. They have like multiple, investments already under their belt. And then for them, it kind of circles right back. They just need to be able to know you, like you, and trust you, and, really understand that you're in it to take care of their money as if it's their money, and invest it wisely, so we can all make a return.
It sounds like to me, and I'm going to pick at the know, like, and trust, because I know I've had Dan on the show before. We mentioned you work with Dan Hanford, and he mentioned the same three principles. I think it's a very important thing. Your investors need to know, like, and trust you. Whatever niche you're in, whatever industry, it's gonna boil down to that eventually, right? For you, it sounds like the reach, the social media, whether it's the podcast or the networking or whatever, that probably tackles, I'm assuming, like the know and the like, right? For the most part, maybe you get some trust in there just through people spending hours and hours listening to you, and then maybe they learn to trust you without you even talking to them. But how do you bridge that gap from just the familiarity of you being online, having a presence, to then getting them in person and kind of getting them to trust you? Where does that kind of bridge form?
Well, even just to back it up a little bit. And I think this is where I think video helps people do this, but also I think my background is in training and development. I also come from public health. I come from the medical field. And the first thing is people need to understand that you're a human being, right? Like, so any presentation that I'm on, I'm not going to do the spiel for you here, but, people want to know your background. Where did you come from? Like, why are you an expert to even talk about what you're talking about? I talk about, people want to know why I invest in real estate. And if you're on any one of my presentations, I put up a picture of my husband and my child, like, of us having a lot of fun. That is why I invest in real estate. And I go through that, not so much to go, hey, like, I've got the perfect life. Here's my, like, one, snapshot in time on social media, right? Like, look at us having fun. It's because I want people to understand that I'm like them. I too, worked a 9-to-5 job. I mean, I worked in public health. I worked for the CDC. This is back in 2001. And I mean, I was traveling, 80 hours a week. And I loved my job, right? My job was tied to my identity and I really loved it. But that's where I think, not to go too far down that rabbit hole about who I am, but to answer your question directly, is I think people invest with people they know, people that they can identify with. Maybe they're not from the same background, but they've got some sort of common thread. I mean, a lot of investors identify with me because I come from the public health field. Some identify with me because I grew a portfolio of 30 single family rentals, and then I decided to want to move, get out of active investing into more passive, and they're struggling there. Other investors identify with me because I'm a mom trying to build a business, and they've got kids at home too. So I was talking to an investor this morning. She's got one kid, with the tutor, the 2-year-old's in the car, and I'm like, I'm actually free today because my daughter's at camp, right? Like, so we're connecting on that level. So that's part of the know part, right? And I think a lot of people skip that knowing part because they look at this and they were like, I got 20 minutes to tell them about my deal, to tell them about my company.
Cart
right?
before the horse.
Right? They're just like, shoving pearly nuggets down their throat. And we understand that we're all busy, but I think you have to like find that connection. And then you can go into the like piece, right? That's where you start kind of, understanding the person's goals. What do they want? Does this person really truly understand what I need as an investor? Can they meet my needs? That's where you're going to build the like part. And then the trust is, part of that is going to be how do you perform, getting them into your funnel, getting them into your first deal. You're going to build a lot of trust along that journey, but also that trust journey doesn't end. It is a continuous cycle. Once that investor's in the deal, how do you maintain communications? Are you doing what you say you're going to do? Are you performing to your business metrics? Are you delivering on time your monthly reports, your quarterly financials, your tax statements? That, and and things happen, things get missed. How are you getting ahead of the communication timeline and being upfront and transparent with the investor of what's going on and keeping them in the loop as if they're a business partner? And that's what people are, want to know. They're being honored as a business partner.
Yeah, skipping ahead to that aspect, I think how you respond when times are tougher, whether it's deal related or in the business, whatever, that's what people are going to remember long term. So when you want to work with an investor for, say, 30 years, you want them in deals, year after year, whatever, cycling through your syndications if you're doing syndications, making sure you're keeping honest and keeping communicative during those tougher times. If the deal is, maybe going a little bit slower than you thought, that's going to really matter. And sometimes even win people over, right? Even if the deal didn't go as smooth as you thought, it might win someone over because they said, man, your morals are really good. And look at what you were able to do and be honest and upfront with everything that's happening. So you'll see a lot of people appreciate that too.
Oh, actually, and being a problem solver. I mean, I'm actually in my deal right now. It's an old deal. It's not somebody, a lot of people talk to me and they're like, who are you invested with? And, like Dan, I'm with multiple operators. I'm not going to refer this person. However, we're hitting a tough time in the business on the exit, and there's been a lot of misses in the communication, and it's not winning favors with any of the investors. There's over 450 of us in the deal, and we're all like, what is going on? But, for somebody who's upfront, transparent, honest, a problem solver, right? Those are, not every deal is going to be a home run or go according to plan. People want to know that they're being well taken care of.
I want to pick on that investor or that sponsor without picking on them too much, but what did you learn from the experience you're currently going through that you're maybe applying to what you guys are doing at Passive Investing? Is there anything you're taking away as a, hey, we haven't really thought about this, or have you just been so, tough on investor communications that you guys are so confident you got it covered from day one?
Well, no, I think, how you evolve your business, you always need to listen to the investor, and as far as this is a personal investment of mine. I have evolved over time, much like Dan has, and I'm sure he talked about it here, the 7 flags of, he calls them the 7 red flags of investing. But when you look at his list, there's actually more than 7 key points. And, this particular operator, had a couple of those red flags in there. So I think this speaks to my evolution as far as a passive investor, what I should be looking for at the very beginning before going to an investment. I entered this investment, I think about 6 years ago. So it's, I've evolved my checklist since then. This wouldn't be a deal that I would go into today, but, hey, like in this, it's not a real estate deal, by the way, but, like real estate, from most of us are here to talk about real estate. Real estate's illiquid. Other passive deals are illiquid. And so, you have to know who you're investing with, right? It's the jockey. It's not the horse. I know so many investors I hop on the phone with, and I'm sure many people here have the same experience. They're like, tell me about the deal. What has the highest returns? What gets the best diversification or tax benefits? And you're like, whoa, hold on. That's fantastic. However, don't you want to know who we are? Let's talk about why we are the group that, for you. Let's make sure we're a good mutual fit first.
Yeah, and it's funny. Some people I've found are just so deal specific, like you mentioned, and they don't even consider the fact that, like, who is running this deal, and even just a little bit shallower than that, like, who is underwriting the deal, because you could just apply any type of assumptions and have a deal look really pretty. And just to go straight into the deal and what are the numbers look like, what are the projections, without even peeling back the layer of, like, well, what does this group assume for this deal? It's just really funny when people dive, like, right into the deep end head first into talking about, what is it going to look like for my money 1, 3, 5 years from now. Yeah, just really interesting. But getting into, I guess we'll transition into kind of, you mentioned, who you guys are as a team. That's a lot of the brand and the loyalty. And you mentioned before we started recording that you're actually adding different verticals into your business, whether it's the car washes, what have you. That to me is a change for some investors, right? It's not something they're used to investing in. But at the same vein, they trust you guys. They know you guys. They like you guys. So how do you kind of get them ready, get them taught up, or if they already learn it, how do you get them prepare these investors for something like that? Because it's a totally different investment, really.
Yeah. So, just to back it up a little bit, I mean, our company name is passiveinvesting.com. So it wasn't passive investing multifamily or passive investing self-storage. So, really the whole basis of the company, is we're a private equity firm and we believe in creating passive income for our investors, long-term wealth build through multiple assets that are backed by hard real estate. So, really we can, we're looking to help our investors diversify all in one place. And it can be a number of different areas. We started off with multifamily. We added self-storage last year. And then, we added car washes and hotels this year. Now, it's kind of like an iceberg, right? Everybody sees like the first car wash deal come out and they're like, oh, wow, they just added a car wash deal overnight. But we've been talking about this internally and investing in it internally for like 18 months, almost 2 years. Our hotel deals, we were actually looking at the deals before COVID hit. But on the car wash piece, we've been building out that funnel internally for quite some time. Kind of to, speak what you're talking about, we wanted to make sure that we were consulting with experts, that we had the right markets, we had the right acquisition modeling, that the returns were going to be what we could deliver to our investors. Our founders invested in car washes before we brought this to our investors, right? We tested this model internally first. And so it's really kind of putting where your money, where your mouth is. Now, as far as prepping the investor, I think we're having those conversations early when we're on the phone with our investors, or doing a podcast or doing a webinar. I get to kind of tease the investors. Hey, guess what? Join us here in a couple of weeks. We're gonna have talk about car washes, and they're like, why car washes, right? So we get to help them understand it from a macro perspective as an investment before they actually see it. And so that's one of the exciting parts of my role, is that I get to just talk about why car washes are a great investment in general, and not so much like, hey, we've got, this deal that's available. Do you want to get in it, right?
Yeah, and pretty much the thesis for that too is when you're not screaming to get investors into a specific deal, you'll probably do much better at getting the investors into that specific deal anyways, right? When you're just preaching that it's good to invest in this type of real estate or this type of investment versus you need to invest in this deal right now, don't miss it. You're going to scare some people away probably, right? So
Well, people need time to get used to it, right? It's
Yep.
like with any sales model, whether you open a company or bring on a new vertical or bring on a new product line, it doesn't matter like what business you're talking about. About 20% of the people are going to get it. They're going to love it. They're going to, and maybe it's because they love you. Maybe it's because they already know about the investment and they love it. Then you got 20% that are like, car washes? No way. Why would I do that? They don't like it. And that's fine. That investment's not for them. But then you're going to have about 60% in the middle that are going, tell me more. And that is the area that I get to play in. And I really love that, because it's hard, coming from investor relations, you're balancing education as well as the raise portion. And so whenever you're actually in the middle of a raise, you're gathering all the money to close. And so that's where it's really, I get to have a lot of fun, because I get to bring in, start talking to investors about this early and often, and just help them get over, or do their research, but help them get over any sort of objection. That way, whenever they actually see the deal, they're prepared. They say it's like a heck yes, or like, I'm going to wait for a little bit. And that I encourage people too. I mean, you got to date for a while, right? Like especially if you're coming into new to a company, it's totally fine to get to know us, get to know any operator, really get to, see what their deals look like. How do they communicate, right? Like that goes back to that know, like, and trust kind of factor.
And to dig in, Whitney, to maybe the subsection of investors who are loyal investors to you guys, have done multiple deals, but weren't quite warmed up to these car wash deals yet. What type of actions are you taking with them, if any? Are you just giving them more time and space to kind of get, a little bit more digested? Are you providing more resources? What is it you guys are doing to kind of nurture that funnel a little bit more consistently?
Yeah, so part of it is just like education, right? Helping them understand what the structure of the deal is. The preferred return is different. The preferred return on our car wash deals is about 10% versus 7% on our multifamily. The IRR, or the waterfall, is different too. So we're doing a 60-40 split up to 20% IRR on the cash car washes. Very different than the 70-30 split on the multifamily and self-storage to 13% IRR. And that right there triggers a lot of people. They're like, how are you able to do that? Well, because it's different. You're buying a business with underlying real estate as opposed to buying commercial real estate as a business, right? So we are investing in car washes, right? And we're looking to put in these operational efficiencies that we've gotten so good at on the multifamily side and self-storage side, into this business. And that really just, people need to, have time to kind of wrap their head around like, oh, I'm buying a business that has real estate attached to it. How does this work? Right. We talked about the terminology at the beginning, multifamily and self-storage. We're usually, talking about how we push the net operating income on the asset. Car washes, it's a different language. Now we're talking about expected gross income. We don't have break-even occupancy on multifamily. We're not talking about that like we do on multifamily. Now we're talking about our break-even cost, down to 45%, on our hotel deals, right? So we have to kind of help people find that language and switch their vocabulary or create that new vocabulary, just so they can kind of wrap their heads around, really the questions they're trying to answer for themselves. Hopefully, if they're already within our ecosystem, what they know what they want, they know why they want it, they trust us. Now they're trying to figure out, how is my money protected? Like, how is my capital protected? What kind of cash flow can I get out of this? Can I build long-term equity from this type of investment? And what kind of tax breaks do I get? Those are usually the questions then that we're trying to help them answer from that point on.
Yeah, and I guess to niche further, answering those questions, solving those problems, is that usually in the form of more webinars and just kind of one direction social media, or are you trying to drum up more phone calls and one-on-ones? What are you guys really looking to do to get everyone up to speed, if you will?
Well, everybody has their mode of how they like to be communicated
Sure.
with. So we do it across all the different modes. I, love video, so I'll do that. We'll write an FAQ document. We'll do blog posts, both internally for our investors, put it up on our website. We'll get ourselves on, schedule on podcasts, talk about the different, asset classes too. We always invite our investors anytime that we have a new vertical that comes online, or anything, they can always reach out to us. That's one thing that sets us apart, I feel like, from a lot of operators, is that we're 100% accessible. You got a question? I've gotten 4 texts from investors while we've been right here on the on our webinar. I mean, we're accessible, to hop on the call with them, and talk to them one-on-one and help them really truly, get comfortable with the investment before they pull the trigger.
So here's a question more just for work-life balance and kind of you personally. How do you balance being accessible to all these investors that you want to help, and you truly do, it seems like, but how do you balance that when, they have your personal number and you got 4 text messages in the 30 minutes we've been on the phone? How do you balance that when the hours are late and you're trying to get back to family, which you mentioned at the beginning of the show is the biggest thing for you? So how do you kind of figure that out for yourself?
I live and die by my calendar. So it's not so much, and here's the thing. I mean, most of the people here are, actively trying to build their businesses. For me, it's not so much does the investor need the answer right then. They need to know when they're going to get the answer, right? And so, if it's in the middle of the day, I have my set work schedule, I will pack it in. I'll respond to as many people as possible. If not, I add some time for grace at the beginning of my day and the end of my day to, let people know, hey, your question's more suited for a conversation. Here's my calendar link. Let's get you on a call. Here are some times that I have it, tomorrow or the next day, right? Or hey, I did get your email. Please give me, until tomorrow morning to get back to you and get you the resources you need and get the detail that you need. Right. So it's not you don't have to be accessible at 10 o'clock at night. That's not what people are looking for. They're looking for, responsiveness. Generally my rule is 24 hours. I pride myself on same day, but I give 24 hours. And then, really just letting investors know when they can expect to get the answer.
Yeah, I think you nailed it at the end. Responsiveness right there. You're not necessarily going to get them the answer they're looking for, but acknowledgement that you're going to get it to them is probably 80% of the battle. So,
oh my gosh,
whether it's investors or partners or anybody, right? So,
well, no, I think you nailed it right there, and that's where I was going to go with this. I mean, this is just a good business practice. I'm actually, my daughter, I'll keep the story short. She's had some orthodontia work that we're working on, and we've been waiting for 2 weeks from the dentist, and they called me yesterday, a little up in arms that I had actually called them 2 weeks later to get the answer on their orthodontia work, and I'm like, just tell me when you're going to have it. And they were really riled about it. I'm like, is it going to be tomorrow? Is it going to be Monday? Just tell me when I'm going to get my answer and I won't bug you anymore. But they couldn't even tell me that. And I was like, that's a problem. That's a customer service problem.
I'm in the camp that bad news is better than no news, because at least you can react to it, right? You can make a decision based off the news. So,
and I don't think there's no bad news needed here, other
right.
than the fact they're going to tell me there's another $5,000 of orthodontia work.
Right. Yeah.
I'm already prepared for that.
Yeah, it's funny that can eke into other businesses, right? Everybody goes through the same thing. If you can nail your relationships with people and just let them know you're actually there to care, I think that's more than half the battle for sure. So, But Whitney, I'd love to hit these 5 key questions. We are kind of coming up, and I know we both got to get out of here. But if you just want to shoot off the first one here, if you could only pick one trait that explains your success, what is that trait and why?
Only one trait. I think I don't take no for an answer, sometimes to my detriment, but I had to learn that, right? Like, from a very young age, it wasn't, Robert Kiyosaki says, don't say I can't, how can I? For me, I had to learn it's not no, it's just not now. And so I'm kind of like the little squeaky wheel. You can tell me no, and 2 weeks later, I'll be like, did you really mean it?
It's only more fuel for the fire, right? So
yeah.
And then what is the most uncharacteristic thing you have done in your business, and why did you do it?
I think for me, and I don't know, I maybe kind of growing up in an environment where I felt like I needed to be a perfectionist. I think I had to let that go. I just had to be like myself, my goofy self, I'm not perfect. I misspell things. I stumble over my words. I say and ah, and I think I just had to get really comfortable with that. And when I did, my business actually started taking off, oddly enough.
Yeah, it's so funny. So many entrepreneurs, obviously consider themselves high performers, and then in the same vein, everything has to be perfection because they're a high performer, and letting go of that control, that perfectionism is actually probably going to leap you much further than hanging on to it. So it's very ironic.
Yeah, definitely.
And then can you name a time where you felt like you were not going to end up successful, and how did you overcome that fear?
I think for me, it goes back to the perfectionism. I was always thinking I had to have the perfect business plan in place. This was before I really doubled down on real estate. I had to have that perfect business plan. I had to have all my ducks in a row. And it was stymieing me. And then when I finally just got into the ready, fire, aim mentality, things kind of started taking off, performing many experiments, seeing if things worked, seeing if people responded, listening to feedback. Once I really kind of gave myself a break from not having to have all the answers, again, not figuring out how can I do it, who has the answer, not how do I get it done. I think that's really where things started taking off for me.
And then a flip to that, can you name a time where something in your business went perfectly, and what did you do to make that a reality?
Just tenacity for me. I guess I would say 2 things. One, tenacity, just, when we were scaling our single family rental portfolio, moving over into multifamily real estate, just looking for those open doors and walking through them and being okay that I didn't have all the answers. And then, when you hit kind of those obstacles that you're just like, this could go really disastrous or it could work out really well. And then you just kind of for me, I don't subscribe to the secret, but sometimes you have to kind of let things go and be patient, because not everything is in your control. It's in your influence, but not always in your control.
And then last one here, what have you been focusing on lately to improve yourself or your business?
Well, that's a great question. Really just trying to, have more conversations with people and more varied conversations, especially in the line of work I'm in, it can be like a lot of the same conversation over and over and over again. People coming to us that already have like some sort of like knowledge about passiveinvesting.com, but really putting myself out there in groups that don't know about passive investing, that aren't completely sold in real estate, and being okay with that, and just really getting to have like, open people's eyes to what the possibilities are, not only for like their wealth building, but just their life in general, different freedoms they can experience in life. That's for me what I've been focusing on, is just helping people again, meet them where they're at, and kind of, showing them what's possible.
Well, Whitney, I appreciate the talk. From just the conversation, it seems like you've really kind of found your niche, and your kind of skills have aligned with your passion, so I congratulate you for that. Just a lot of wealth on how you would deal with investors, and really ultimately, how you deal with people, really, if we're boiling it down to something. But yeah, just appreciate it once again. And just for the listener, do you want to let them know how they can reach you today?
Absolutely. Yeah. You can reach out to me at passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com. Short little form there. It just helps me capture some information about you and your investing goals. And then you also get access to my calendar if you want to jump online, on the phone for a call. And I can just, I like talking about all things real estate. So I just, would be honored to get the opportunity to know you as a person and see if I can help.
Awesome, Whitney. Thanks again. Thank you for listening to the show. I don't take your time and attention for granted, and appreciate that you would spend it with me. If you enjoyed this show or any of my previous shows, it would be a huge help if you would rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcasting service, or even just share the episode with a friend. And if you'd like help from me, or would like to talk about real estate investing further, feel free to visit the show notes for more information, or you can visit davidtravis.com.